Good evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? This is our Veg Grower Podcast live stream on the 13th of August, 2023. And weirdly, the sun has been out today. As you can probably tell, I'm a bit sweaty or shiny up here, and what have you. So, good sign that the sun is out at long last. It feels like we have only had rain over the last few weeks. Now, coming up today, I want to get your ideas on perennial veg, what perennial veg you might grow, what perennial veg you might want to grow, and how you go about growing it. We'll get into that in just a moment, but first of all, let's see if anybody's out there. And Adrian is out there saying hello, good evening to you. Ballycillian Allotment Man is out there and saying hello to everybody, good evening to you. Philly SBB is out there. Hello, everyone. Good evening to you. Turbo Stream is out there saying good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. We've got, oh no, that's Turbo Stream. Idaho Gone Girl. Hi, Richard. Good evening to you, Idaho. And I've got to say, really enjoyed your chat last night, your live stream. Great stuff. And same to Steve Digwell. Well done to both of you. Really enjoyed it. Ballycillian is out there saying hi Idaho /Turbo. Hello to you. Oh, I've already said hello to Ballycillian, haven't I? Who else have we got? Kate is out there. Good evening, Veg Army. Good evening to you. Anna Jones. Good evening, gardeners. Good evening to you. Let's see who else have we got. Scrolling through, Stuart Jackson is out there. Good evening, and to Richard and the Veg Army, good evening to you. Hope you had a great birthday last week. We all wished you a happy birthday. Who else have we got out there? Anybody else? We have got Digger Green Fingers, the man himself. Hello, everybody, peeps. Back in 2 ticks. Runner beans need watering. We will be counting the minutes that you are gone while you are there. Who else have we got? Hargrave Gas is out there saying, evening, everyone. Hope you've all had a great week. Good evening to you. Hope you've had a great week as well. As I said, the weather perking up has made it so much happier. Graham Arnold, evening, everyone. Hope you're well. Good evening to you. Anybody else? I'm sure there's plenty more. Gary is out there. Good evening, all. Good evening to you. Somebody over on the Facebook group is joining us and saying good evening, all. Good evening to you. Whoever's on the Facebook group, I cannot, if you are watching on the Facebook group as well, I can't always see just who you are. So if you could just let me know who you are, your name at the end of your comment, just so I can address you personally. All good. Who else have we got? Stuart Jackson is saying there's no sun here, Richard. Left on the Isle of Wight on Saturday. I'm glad to be back. Well, there's been plenty down here. Funny story, actually, on that note. I was down the allotment this morning, and one of my neighbours, he mentioned that he had just came down to the allotment, and he said half an hour before he was at home, and there was a cloud burst. And he was expecting it to be soaking down on the allotment. We were completely dry on the allotment. My wife said the same when I came home. Also, very wet here, but dry down on the allotment in space of half a mile. Very amusing. David Williams, evening all. Thanks for the seed. Thank you so much for joining our supporters club, David. Lovely to see you. Who else have we got? Ian Suggett, my dad. Good evening, growers. Good evening to you. Hope you are well. Robert Brailsford, good evening to you. Jenny says, hello, everyone. I hope you've all had a great week. Good evening to you. Hope you've had a great week as well. Anybody else? I think. Nicola is out there. So evening, Richard and all. Raining heavy here most of the day. Isn't the weather amazing? We've had beautiful sunshine most of the day, but it depends where you are, doesn't it? And Scott is out there. That was me on the Facebook group. Should be showing my name now, says Scott. Yes, it is. So fantastic. Lovely to see you and welcome. So let's get into this chat about perennial vegetables. And this, I can't remember who was asking about this, but it's a good conversation to have because perennial vegetables are something I think we should be doing it a bit more of. We often think of asparagus or rhubarb as our perennial vegetables, i.e. we plant them and they come back year after year after year and provide us with a good lot of food. Certainly rhubarb and asparagus we get plenty of here at the Veg Grower Podcast. But there are many other perennial vegetables that are out there that we want to explore as well. So I guess my question to you, first of all, what are some of your favorite perennial vegetables to grow and why? Let us know in the comments. Now, Jenny is out there saying, I have squash vines breaking through the gazebo and taking over the outdoor sofa. Love it. Sweet corn well over my head. Tabry has gone nuts. And all of a sudden it's growing again. It's like a jungle. It's weird. I was saying this. I was planting out some butternut squash earlier today. And the butternut squash plants have been really, really slow. But in the last week or two, they suddenly have put on a lot of growth, which is great. It seems like the conditions just over the last couple of weeks have improved to the point that they seem to want to grow. And it sounds like similar to you with Tabries and other things as well. We have got Amanda over on the Facebook group. Good evening to you. Kate says, heavy rain here today, but cleared up now. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, it's just weird how the weather is so changeable. Hopefully we just need a bit of sun. I keep saying this, we need some sun too. Jenny says, Idaho and Digwell, I saved your video to watch next week. I'm looking forward to it. It's I really enjoyed it. I don't know if you saw my comments, but I was there watching. I don't know. Kate, I'm sorry I missed the live, Idaho. I'll watch it back. And Idaho says, thank you again, Steve at Digwell. Yeah, excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. Time for a swig of my coffee. So, yeah, my choice of perennial vegetables I've got for my list, obviously asparagus, and I love asparagus. I've got an asparagus patch down on the allotment, which doesn't do brilliantly, if I'm honest with you. But I want to, well, I've got some asparagus I've grown from seed this year, and I'm hoping to get these planted here at home somewhere in order that I can continue trying to grow a lot more of these perennial vegetables. I love perennial vegetables like our apple trees and everything else, just to try and just because I like the idea of just planting once and forget about it. Obviously, not all vegetables are like that. Our annuals, our cabbage, or our normal cabbages, our tomatoes and what have you, will die out. Although I did hear somewhere that tomatoes in their native land are perennial. It's just because we try and grow them somewhere where they're not supposed to grow, that they become an annual here. And rhubarb, I mean, I know not many people realize or think of rhubarb as a vegetable, but it is a vegetable. We grow it like a vegetable, we eat it like a vegetable. It's just we have it with dessert, and it's not exactly the sweetest plant, is it? So all good. That's two of the ones I am starting off with. Kate says, really strange this week. I pruned my apple trees earlier this year, and then the apples came through much bigger. Fine. This week, every single one gone, mostly on the floor. Any ideas? So it could be the apples are ready, although it's very, very early for apples, unless it's an early variety of apples. I have noticed some of my pears are falling to the floor, and what normally happens during June is what we call a June drop, where they shed a load of apples or pears in order to give itself a bit more room. So my thought is that it's probably gone through that, but to shed all of them, it's probably a sign that the tree is under stress, maybe even water. So it's just shedding all its trees in order to survive. That's my thoughts. We'll throw that out there if anybody else has any ideas on why Kate's tree has shedded all the apples. Digwell says, sorry, Richard, missed it. That's right, it happens. I know what it's like. Don't get me wrong, I know what it's like. Nicholas says, got some small starter asparagus from B&Q. Didn't do well. I have one from 8. That's not unusual with asparagus. Asparagus can be a little tricky to get started, but once it is started, once it is established, it comes back for about 20 years. So it's always worth doing. I didn't see your comments, Richard. Sometimes the chats go by and I miss it. I know exactly what it's like. Don't get me wrong. That's why it's not easy, is it? So not a problem. Not a problem. It says, I have trouble growing asparagus, but rhubarb is growing well here. So asparagus. So I do find asparagus does better in sort of salty seaside conditions. So perhaps you're just a little bit too damp for it, possibly. I'm not sure. I mean, asparagus does a lot of moisture thinking about it. I find it does better with a good mulch of seaweed as well. So, yeah, it's a difficult one to get established, asparagus, granted. Stuart Jackson says, I know it's off subject, but my bay tree has started turning yellow. Any ideas, team? Thanks. Probably under stress. Either waterlogged, which is possible, or probably waterlogged. So hopefully it'll drain out. Turbo Stream says, I grow mostly fruit that come back each year. Raspberry, strawberry, blackcurrant, red currant, etc. And they're definite versions of perennials, all the fruits that come back. So there's something that I think we could add to this list, of course, as well. And he goes on to say, I didn't see your comments either, Richard, yesterday. Weird. Don't know. It happens though, doesn't it? Ballysin's asking Stuart with his bay tree, are the roots waterlogged? And my thought as well could be. And then Amanda says, I have asparagus in 2 places on my plot. Anything I should consider before moving both lots to a bed together? Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, my advice is get the bed that you want them to be in really, really well prepared. Get plenty of organic matter worked into the soil. Try and remove as many weeds as possible, and just get it really, really well prepared before planting. That's a mistake I made. I didn't prepare the bed on the allotment well enough, so I get a lot of weeds for that very reason. What I find when I planted out my asparagus, I actually planted it in the autumn, so it had all over winter to get some of its roots into the ground while the soil is moist, which to me I find works a lot better for many of these perennial plants, getting them established during the winter months. So they put all the work into the roots, and then come the springtime, they spring into life. I find, particularly with asparagus, if I planted it in the springtime, you have to really work hard at trying to keep it well watered in order for it to establish. So I would recommend trying to move them August, September, October time if you can, and get them planted. Yeah, that's all I can think of. That's all I can really think of that. But prepare the beds beforehand is probably the most important thing. Jenny says, I have yacon, oca, and Jerusalem artichokes. Didn't think of Jerusalem artichokes or yacon or oca. First for me this year, but hopefully you'll have enough to eat and leave for next year. So I have grown both yacon and oca in the past. I wasn't impressed with yacon or oca for me personally. Jerusalem artichokes we've decided to get rid of, which is easier said than done because they are very persistent. But the only reason we've decided to get rid of the Jerusalem artichokes is we had so many, we just weren't eating them. So they're very tasty, very, very tasty, but just not eating them. Now these Jerusalem artichokes, yacon and oca aren't technically a perennial. They are an annual, but they can be treated like a perennial in the fact that they will come back no matter how well you dig out the soil. And Jerusalem artichokes particularly are quite troublesome for getting them all out of the ground, and then they just come back and back. Scott says, I don't grow asparagus. I'm too impatient to wait for 3 years. Can it be ready to harvest earlier if I buy established plants? So if you're buying the plants in pots, you could technically get it a little bit earlier. But even then, when you first harvest it, I would still give it a couple of years. But when you first harvest it, you just still need to give it a good, or not harvest it all in one go, so it has a good chance to establish. What I find, again, when I planted mine in autumn, that that's year one, so you actually lose a year effectively before you can start harvesting them, because they're already establishing over the winter. So that's another reason I say plant them in autumn. Nicola, chives, artichoke globe and Jerusalem, Denton, kale, garlic, Welsh creeping onions, horseradish. All good ideas. These are all perennial plants, or things that we can treat as perennials. Denton kale, tell me a bit more about that, Nicola. That sounds very interesting. Margaret says, sorry, Rich, off the topic, but might be of interest to some. I am going to trial Super Soil. It is a microbiotic soil improver. It is expensive, but a farming friend in Kent is using it, and his yield has doubled. We shall see next year. I've saw Super Soil at one of the shows recently. Again, it is expensive, but if it works, that'll be fantastic to find out more. Jenny says, also rhubarb plants, raspberries, red and golden, whiteberries, tayberries. I have some Greek gigantis in pots, as they can come back if not too wet and cold over winter. Again, yeah, I mean, hitting into how we look after these plants over the winter is going to be an interesting one as well. Or something we can hit upon in just a moment. So Amanda says, thank you. Nicola says, okay, I have two. She also says, I like Jerusalem artichokes just full of flowers. Yeah, they're related to the sunflowers. They are nice flowers, but they do take over a little bit. You've got to be very, very careful with them. Idaho says, I cannot find asparagus plants available in the fall, but planting in the fall so it can develop a good root system over winter makes sense. Yeah, definitely. This is I've tried planting it in the spring on the allotment. I just found it worked better over winter. My youngest asparagus plants that I've grown from seed, they're still in pots. They're only a year old at the moment. They're looking great, I've got to say. They're very small. And I'm worried how we're going to get those through the winter. They're probably going to have to go in a greenhouse and be covered to survive the winter. But it's looking good. It's looking good anyway. Nicholas says, mine are in pots. Jerusalem artichokes, I'm thinking. Yeah. I have a patch of chives, says Turbo Stream. I'd admit I have never harvested any from it. Yeah, why aren't you harvesting any? That's the point of growing it. Why aren't you harvesting it? That's all I would sell, or I would say. Digwell says, I promote Super Soil, so it obviously must work very, very well. Scott says, kale, I want to do. There is one called Keeper that I think I will try next year. Is that a perennial kale? Because I know there is some versions or some kales that are perennial. The same as cabbages, and I'm kind of intrigued about perennial kale and perennial cabbages, if I'm honest with you. After trying to find some seeds, I grew or tried to grow some Japanese walking onions a few years ago as a perennial, but they never really did seem to take that well. But they were saying I was definitely intrigued to try and treat like a perennial. I've got some Welsh onion seed as well, which we're going to try and grow successfully. Jenny says, I wanted the double bonus of Jerusalem artichokes, food and as a windbreak, and make a mini ecosystem behind it. I've used sweet corn as a windbreak, but found they snapped. I've seen Jerusalem artichoke as windbreak online. It definitely does work. If it definitely does work. They are tough old plants. The trouble is they're a windbreak during the spring, summer, autumn months. You really need the wind, I think, or I find I need the windbreak during the winter months more. Stuart says, I also have apples, raspberries, gooseberries. Yes, I do know they are fruit, but they stay in my garden all year round. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. They are what we're going to discuss about or trying to discuss tonight as well. Scott says they're perennial kale. I will can email me the details and I'll try and find some seeds for that. Stuart says, I have had lemongrass for the last 2 years. Does that count? It definitely does count, lemongrass. Let's see. Digwell is saying, you never did ask me for a pouch of super soil. Do you want one? Yes, please. Send me an email and I'll send everything you need over. But interesting to know how well it works. Strawberries. I know they only last a couple of years, but do they count as you use the runners? So I think this is a good question, actually. What we're getting into the details now is, what do we determine as perennial? What is the definition of perennial or compared to annual? For me, I've always defined perennial as a plant that comes back each year. Globe artichoke is another example of a perennial plant. Now, strawberries, they can come back. Well, strawberries are technically a perennial because they can come back and they can last for many, many years. They just don't produce as much fruit once they get into sort of year 4, year 5, and so on. But you can get more plants from them. So if you're this might be how we define it. If you are dedicating a bed to that one particular plant for more than 1 year, that will be a perennial. I think that might be how we define it. Toby Stream, the chives were there when I took over the plot. I just forget to harvest them. I perhaps should lift the clump and divide it and replant nearer the shed so I remember. Memory like a sieve. I think that's what he's saying. Yeah, it'll work. I mean, I love chives. I try and eat a lot of them. So definitely something we use. So yeah, make the most of it. Jenny says, I live in a valley. I always need a windbreak. Yeah, of course. Scott says, I made a mistake of planting too many Jerusalem artichokes. I love them, but I could feed my village with them. Think this year I will only plant a few back. This is the trouble. I did find that we got too many of them, so I had to give them up in the end and not really. And we just weren't eating them as much as we would like. Now, Anne says, I have a lemon tree in a pot that has to go back into the greenhouse for a winter. Shrub, perennial. Yes, I would describe that as a perennial because you're still growing it in the pot. I've got a lemon tree myself. Or is it lemon? Yeah, lemon. Never produces anything, but we do have to keep trying to move it into the greenhouse over winter. Same as some of my other, I've got a Szechuan pepper plant that does really well as well. That's also a perennial, I guess you could say. So Anna says, I have Babington leek bulbs growing as an ornamental in a tub. Some people use it like perennial garlic, but I have never tried it. Garlic chives have got a garlic flavour as well. They come back. But Babington's leek, somebody has mentioned that, and that does sound like a good idea. Is it like a perennial leek or a perennial garlic? I'm guessing, Anna, if you've got it as an ornamental in a tub, you've never tried eating it. No, you say you've never tried eating it. Has anybody ever tried eating Babington leek, and what did it turn out like? Digwell says, I grew some Austrian tree cabbage this year, but every pest on the entire site decided to descend on it. No perennial cabbage for Digwell. And I think it hit upon a good point, actually. If these perennial vegetables are going to be attracting in some of the pests and diseases, that might cause us a bit of a problem. Idaho says there's a perennial kales called Taunton Dean. I tried it over here. I found one source for a perennial kale variety, wasn't named. I bought three cuttings, one rooted but died over winter. That's annoying, isn't it? I mean, again, I'm trying to find perennial kale, perennial cabbage, and any other perennials that we can try and grow here at our garden. Amanda says, I use lots of herbs, mint, oregano, or oregano, depending on how you sow it. Rosemary, I have had a few years and it is still great. It's true. Yeah, herbs are probably another good version of a perennial plant. chilies, do they count? Well, you can. I mean, you can have chilies growing for more than 1 year, but no, I'm not going to say that doesn't quite count for this, unless you can prove it to me otherwise. Anne says, we tried perpetual spinach but found it too strong a flavour. Even the pigs wouldn't eat it. Now, funny enough, perpetual spinach is something I have made a note of, and I don't know if you would call it perpetual, perennial in the real world. I did have some of it growing for about 3 years, but then it just went a bit too stringy. So 3 years, yeah, you could call that perennial. But it is quite a strong flavour. It doesn't sort of, when you cook it, it doesn't go down as much as normal spinach. It's definitely not as tender as normal spinach. But it's a good sauce, I think, if you can find the right way to cook it. It's definitely a lot tougher, isn't it, than normal spinach. Scott says, Szechuan pepper, I'm definitely trying that. Wouldn't have thought we could grow it. Yes, I've tried growing it from seed several times and they never seem to germinate. Best thing to do is buy a young plant. The people I got it from are at Gardener's World. It's called Jurassic something or another. And I bought just a little plant. It's now about 4 foot tall. Really, really good plant, I've got to say. It hasn't produced anything yet, but really lovely looking plant. Now, one thing that I wanted to find out, and we've sort of hit upon this slightly with the perennial spinach, is do these perennial plants have any unique flavors or any unique textures that are different to our annual versions? Like the kale, the perennial kale, is it tougher? Is it harder to eat? I don't know. Let us know if you have any thoughts on that. Digwell says, Babington's leek is wild in the UK/Ireland, a perennial with garlicky taste. They tend to bulb up low. Oh, is that like the tri-cornered leek that I have growing around here in the spring? Really, really garlicky smell, but it's tri-cornered leek. Is that similar stuff? I hate the stuff in some ways because it's so invasive if it is. But it does look quite pretty at that same point. Rebecca, good evening. Sorry I'm late. I thought I saw you earlier. Did I, or is this another Rebecca? I thought I saw you earlier on YouTube, but I could be wrong. At this point, I tell you what, let's have a look at this week's grow along, which you guys, or sow along as it should be called, which you guys decided was going to be beetroot for this week. It's only a couple of minute video, so give you a chance to share your thoughts on the questions that I'm asking. Right guys, this week we decided we're going to be sowing beetroot as our grow along. We spoke about beetroot recipes just last week, so you guys decided you wanted to sow it again. Now, earlier this year I sowed some beetroot. We've made several sowings throughout the year, but when we last done this, I sowed 3 per plug plant. That's 3 seeds per plug plant in Charles Dowding's method of sowing beetroot. And that worked quite well. I've got to say, we got some good beetroot out of it. But this week, what we're going to be doing is just making a drill into the compost in our veggie pod, and we're going to take the seeds and sow them directly in there. Now, the seeds themselves are quite large when it comes to beetroot and easy to manage, so therefore easy to give themselves plenty of distance. But what you find with beetroot is that you can get certain varieties that are actually clusters of beetroot seeds. So they're large because they're a cluster of seeds, and you could sow 1 seed and end up with 5 or 6 beetroots. It's very difficult to work out what is a monocluster or a cluster, so I'm playing it safe this week. This variety is Boltardi, which is what I did before with the 3 seeds per station, but I'm playing it safe and I'm just sowing them into a drill. Now, we keep them well watered, of course, and pretty soon they should germinate. Beetroot is quite quick. And then we will thin them out to give about 15 centimetres of space between each plant. Of course, we can eat the thinnings and we can eat the leaves as well. They're really tasty as a salad leaf. Then we just keep an eye on them, keep them growing and harvest as we need them. I'll wait till they're about the size of a tennis ball, and then that is as large as they really want. We have got some that are a bit larger. They taste good, but they're not as good as when they are younger and smaller. So there we go. Beetroot, give it a try and let us know how you get on and how you're getting on with some of your other seeds that we've sown in the past. Right guys, back to the studio. And here we are back in the studio, so I'm having a bit of a fun with it. It was really hot in that greenhouse trying to shoot that video, believe it or not. But yeah, beetroot, you guys decided last week, we were talking about beetroot, you wanted me to sow it this week. Let us know what seeds you think we should sow next week for, for next week's sow along. Jenny says, I fancy growing some hops. They look amazing. Many traditional garden plants that are edibles are perennial, such as hosta, an asparagus alternative, dahlia, etc. Yeah. Hops I've never actually grown before. Again, I don't, as you know, I don't drink, so I've had no interest in growing hops. But they are meant to be very good if you have trouble sleeping, believe it or not. But be interested to know how you get on with hops. They do grow quite big from what I understand as well. But yeah, hostas also, I know we don't often think of things like hostas or dahlias. They're generally regarded as flowers, but they do have that edible element to them. And I really do. Excuse me, sorry. Just choking on myself at the same time. Excuse me, sorry guys. Hostas, they're best when they are young. They taste really, really nice. If you just sort of gently fry them with a bit of garlic. Excuse me. But I'm just gonna have a swig of this again. Dahlias, again, dahlias were originally imported into the UK as a food source, so it's not unheard of for them to be edible. It's just we don't regard them as being edible. You eat the tubers on those. Again, quite tasty, has to be said. That's something I'm looking at when I expand my garden, of doing more dahlias and things like that. Nope, I've just joined, says Rebecca. Sorry, I got confused. Digwell says three-cornered leek is different as it has bell-shaped flowers and not the classic allium ball flower. Okay, I was wondering. I did wonder when you were talking about them. So that's interesting. Digwell says Bolt Hardy is multi-gem, so best to sow single or in drills as you did. Yeah, this is what I mean. There's some. Don't get me wrong. Charles Dowding's way of sowing 3 seeds per plug plant worked really well, providing you know if it's a monogerm or multi-germ. So just got to think of that when you sow them. Jenny says, I don't drink either. The hops have few uses and loved by pollinators. Don't choke. I didn't choke. I did, but I got over it. I have a steady supply of dandelions. Do you count as you can eat the flowers, leaves, and make cordial from the roots? Yeah, I'd say that counts. I made the what was it? Dandelion honey last 2023. Actually, that was really nice. Actually, really nice. Hi guys, how long should my beetroot take before I harvest? As mine was sown around 10 weeks ago, but still very small. Thanks. So mine was sown back in March, and I've just harvested the last of those. So don't worry too much. They just taste better when they're small, but they can, as long as they're not going woody, they should be okay. If yours are still very small, they should be okay. Just enjoy them for what they are. But why are they small? 10 weeks, they should do okay. Ido says, I've never eaten hostas or dahlias. They are very nice. I've got to say, they are very nice. Anna says, I grew hop plant once. The leaves were mauled by something or other. Ended up digging it up and binning it. Interesting. I know they're very popular in the Kent area, of course. But mauled by something. Something took a liking to them. Scott says, sea kale is a perennial. I harvested some seeds from wild ones, so going to look into growing them. Yeah, sea kale. I mean, we get a lot of that down on the beach. I've eaten it. It's a bit tough, I find. But I guess if you're able to grow it at home, you probably will have to water it with salt water. A bit like marsh samphire, if you've ever grown that. You need salt water. I mean, asparagus benefits from a bit of salt as well on that note, so nothing too serious. Don't forget that Charles Dowding is a market gardener. Yeah, I mean, his methods, he likes to save time and be more profitable, which makes sense. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's what he's trying to do with us as well, isn't it? He's sharing his tricks, which we can all use. But again, when it comes to the beetroot, as I said, I find that the multi-germ or the mono-germ is hard to tell. Turbo Stream, I sowed 3 Bolt Hardy per cell to grow in a pot builder's bucket in my porch. All are up. Yeah. That's basically doing the Charles Dowding's method, and that's great, isn't it? 3 per pot and all are up. Fantastic. Does ginger count? May have been mentioned already. I haven't mentioned ginger actually. No, I have lots and lots of ginger. Olive herb is a perennial, and this is delicious. Highly recommend it. I've never heard of olive herb, if I'm honest with you. We start a new bit of paper. I'll take a note of olive herb. I've never heard of that, but yeah, ginger. I mean, I harvested some ginger last year, as you know, and we've got several buckets of ginger now. I've got to pot them up into something a bit bigger soon, thinking about it, to try and make sure they grow and grow and grow. So, yeah, definitely does come back if you do it right. Watercress is perennial. Of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, watercress is great if you have a decent water course. I know Digwell has fish, so he's probably able to grow it. I've tried growing watercress from seed, and it's never really been successful. I've grown it from a cut-in. I basically went and bought some watercress from a supermarket in a bag, and just put a bit of that into a jug of water until it rooted, and then I planted the roots out, and that worked really well. Really nice watercress, but you do have to keep it really, really well watered in order to be successful. Stuart Jackson says, I think I will sow this month's beetroot seeds into the veggie pod, and hopefully they will grow well in there. They do seem to grow quite well in a veggie pod, it has to be said, I find. I suspect it's due to the amount of moisture, but this year it's been moist everywhere, hasn't it? Digwell, don't get me wrong, I follow Charles Dowding, but I don't have a team of helpers to pick the thousands of beetroot. LOL. I think what we got to remember is Charles Dowding is showing how he does it on his 3 acres, and we can, like everybody on YouTube, we can take all the advice, or anybody on social media, we take all the advice from everyone and put it into our own gardens. Use it our own way. I mean, I've got my own system, and what I call my 3 ways of trying to reduce weeds on the allotment. So the first thing is I try and go down the allotment on a daily basis to clear all the weeds. Second is I mulch as much as possible, either grass clippings or compost. No dig gardening falls into that same category. And third, I always have something, or try and have something growing in the beds. If I can't have edible plants, then it's green manures. And I don't know anybody else who talks about that sort of thing in that same way, but that's my method. Jenny says, Digwell, I'll pick for you. I'll take payment for your nice meals. Indeed. And Digwell says, my best beets are in the veggie pod. I find that as well. My veggie pod just does the best beets for me. Turbo Stream, multi-sow is a great idea for small space of container growing. Definitely. And it all works. Now, we're coming. Let's come back to. I tell you what. Actually, what I'm going to do now. I've got Rebecca sent me in. I think she mentioned it last week. Rebecca sent in a video of her garden tour. Let's have a look at that, and we'll come back afterwards.
Everyone, it's August and I thought I'd come and show you my little growing area, my kitchen garden. Things are going well and we've been having a lot of produce off, so I'll show you how things are going. If you remember, I just grow from home and I just have these 6 raised beds along here, and we get quite a lot of food from them. So this one's had lettuce in, but we've changed it over now and it's got all the squash in, so we just made this little support for them with a little bit of chicken wire so they can grow up, and they're doing quite well. That's a pumpkin down there that's not doing so well, but the rest are going good. That one's scrambled completely over there, so they're doing nice. Little fig here, he's ready to be popped onto a different pot because that one's too small, but we have got a fig, so he's going okay. This was my experiment this year. This was my square foot gardening, and it was really good. I'll definitely do it again. So I've had all sorts of different veg in there, parsnips, carrots, I've had lettuce in here, but now I've just replaced it for spring onions, beetroot at the back, tomatoes, squash, cabbage. It's been really good. I've really enjoyed doing that this year. Here's my beans. They're producing absolutely loads and loads. So having those for my dinner today, and they've been wonderful. I've also got those underplanted with some sweet corn, which is coming, and cabbage, and I don't like to waste my space, so I've just popped in some more spring onions. Here's another squash. He's coming well down there. I think it's Goldilocks, that one. Big hydrangea in the middle. And I'll take you around to this one. So in here, a bit of a mix again. Got some sweet corn, some more beans and cabbages under there, been a little bit nibbled. That was my courgette. Not a great year for courgettes. I had a few off them, but nothing brilliant. Cosmos rabenza. Love that cosmos, really nice, and the bees absolutely love it as well. Let me take you around to this area. More flowers here for the bees, and they just love them. And then in this one, beetroot. It's been a hard year for my beetroot this year, but we've had a few bits of. And in the back there, I'm just changing over to a bit more beetroot, and then I'm starting to empty that bed, ready to put my turnips in for winter. I'll take you over to my polytunnel, greenhouse. So in here, we've been growing tomatoes and they've done well, getting a little bit of blight now, so I'm going to shift these out here. But these are all my tumblers, and I've got some aubergines up top there. And then these tomatoes, I'm just starting to strip them, but they've been pretty good. Had all different varieties, black Krim and I think Alyssa Craig is it. So yeah, loads of tomatoes. These ones have been cherry red and they've been really good. So that's the greenhouse. And in this one, I've also got my cucumbers. They've been going really well this year. Got absolutely millions of cucumbers. That's a beaut. They've been doing really well, and I just support that on the back of my greenhouse with some chicken wire, and they just scramble up it and absolutely love it. God, look at the size of that one in there. He really is a beaut. So that's the cucumbers. And then finally into my flower area. This is where I grow all my dahlias, and they've been looking really good this year. All my purples and oranges with my roses, and I've got some more over here. That's my hot border, which is looking very hot with all the crocosmia and the lilies. Salvias with my roses here, but these are my dahlias, which are looking pretty nice. That's an absolute beaut. And down there with my orange ones, my roses. They're growing ever so well. I think it's all this rain we've had. And this one, looking really nice. So yeah, it's quite a busy garden here.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Sorry, slight delay in getting that organised. Just suddenly thought I might take myself off mute. Lovely garden there, Rebecca. Always love seeing everybody else's gardens. Rebecca, yours is just lovely as well. I was particularly inspired by the fact that you're using square foot gardening, or did an experiment with square foot gardening. I've tried in the past, but I found you just had to be so organized. It just didn't work for me. And I know a couple other people I've spoken to found the same. So it's good to see somebody actually make a success of that. I was also paying attention to your beds because I'm, as you know, I'm expanding or going to be adding new beds to my garden here at home over the winter. I say new beds, changing things around over the winter. But I've been pricing up wood, and it's getting very expensive. But then I went on to other sites, and I discovered that I can buy metal wood or metal raised beds for half the price it would cost me for wood. So I'm debating what to do on that. And looking at yours again, I'm thinking wood looks so much better. Right, let's have a look what people are saying in the comments during that time. Anna Jones is asking about garden huckleberry that Digwell once baked in a pie. Is it a perennial or a annual? And Digwell did say it's an annual in it's an annual in the UK, as it's not frost hardy. So something to think about. Scott says, guess watercress would work well in a hydroponic system. I guess it would actually. I just find it's easier to grow from a cutting as opposed to from seeds. A lot of people are asking about olive herb, and Jenny does say I got mine from Urban Herbs. It's on my list. I'm going to be checking that out and giving it a try. Sounds really good. Really good. Scott says a productive space you have there. Stuart likes the brick path between the beds. That's for Rebecca, of course. Amanda says your plot looks great. I've just given up half my plot, and this has definitely inspired me as it shows how many things can be grown in a smaller space. Well done, from Amanda. Turbo Stream says, what a great growing space packed with veggies. Stuart says lovely dahlias. Jenny says fantastic garden, absolutely beautiful, and what a lovely garden. It looks fantastic. Idaho says that is a beautiful garden, and Rebecca comes back and says thanks, Amanda. I have to get in as much as I can with only having a small spot. Does feel like that, doesn't it? You do want to pack it in with as much as we possibly can and produce as much as we possibly can as well. So let's bring this back to a lovely video. Lovely to see so much, but we are talking about perennial vegetables today, and I think we've sort of discussed. I haven't heard of anybody talk about any of the perennial vegetables that I think we want to look more into. Perennial kale, perennial cabbage, perennial leeks if they exist. After tonight, is anybody going to be looking at getting some of these to grow on their own gardens or allotment? It's something I definitely want to try. I probably would have to dedicate a bed to growing these, but I'll be interested to know if anybody else is going to try that. Rebecca says, thank you to everyone, so kind. And Amanda says, I love Urban Herbs, my go-to for herbs. A lovely company. I usually see them at Gardeners World, so I just like that. Jenny says, I've just hit the thumbs up. A great live tonight. Yes, please do give us a like. Please do give us a follow. Please do give us a subscribe if you are enjoying this live show. And don't forget to click the notifications so you know when we go live. I often forget that, don't I? Like, thank you for the reminder there, Jenny. But yeah, I'm going to be, when I finish this show, I am going to be ordering some of these perennial kale, perennial cabbage. I saw a picture with Rob Smith the other day with a huge perennial cabbage. It looked absolutely stunning. And I'm going to be looking into getting some of these. I generally try and grow these sort of things down on the allotment because they take up the space for quite a while. I could grow them at home. My garden is big enough, but not that big in the grand scheme of things. We have to be very clever with our planting here in some ways. But I'm really wanted to go and get some of these perennial plants and give it a try, just because I like the idea of just always having that supply of vegetables or food and not having to worry about it. Like my asparagus, I know that comes back every year. My rhubarb comes back every year, and it'd be good to get some of these other things in too. Stuart Jackson says, I would love to grow perennial kale as we eat lots of kale. Yeah, that's definitely one. Jenny says, my basket on Incredible Vegetable website is full of lots of kales, broccoli, and traditional plants like Old King Henry, etc. I'm accepting donations to fund my basket. Yes, I know how you feel there. It does soon add up, doesn't it, when you get talking into all these sort of things. That kind of brings me up with a subject I was thinking of talking about next week, in that what sort of seeds are you looking at sowing next year as a possible subject? What making a list, and we'll make a list together. That might be a possible subject for next week, if anybody is interested in that. Of course, you get a chance to choose your subjects when we come towards the end. I can do you some, that would be great, Nicola. I would love some cuttings, if possible, of anything that is or perennial that falls into it. I mean, I've got, as I said, I've got asparagus and rhubarb, so I don't need any more of those. But I've got globe artichoke as well, which does come back every year. But I don't eat the globe artichokes. I just find them too much of a faff to try and eat. So I'm going to be trying somehow. I don't know how I'm going to remove this globe artichoke plant, because it is big, it is full, the roots are going to be deep. But I really want to get rid of this globe artichoke plant at some time, in order to free up the space for something that is no good. So yeah. Jenny says, list started, buying started, being carried away with seeds started. I am a bugger for seeds. Aren't we all? I've got a huge collection of seeds that I'm trying to work my way through. Hopefully next year I will get a lot of these sown, because I've got a few things in motion for next year. Added to that, one other thing that I wanted to ask, if anybody does grow any of these perennial plants, and I did hit on this a little bit earlier, is how do you look after them, particularly over the winter months? So like my asparagus and my rhubarb, that does die down over the winter months, and I try and give them all a really good mulch. My rhubarb usually with compost, because I find that works really well. The asparagus, I try and use a seaweed that I've collected from the beach, washed up seaweed, that is, and I mulch that all over my asparagus, and that's something I'm going to be itchy nose doing this winter, as well as a bit of compost as well. But what I'm doing these for, the reason I like to do or apply these mulches over the winter, obviously suppress the weeds and everything, but also act as like a blanket and cover the soil and protect those crowns from frost. That's my theory, my thinking anyway, as to why I tend to do this. And does anybody else do this? Do you do a similar sort of thing with your rhubarb, your asparagus plants, your perennial kale, your perennial cabbage, or anything like that? Let me know. Stuart Jackson says, I've been to the garden centre over the last week and I found the seed prices have gone up, so I think we'll be using the Supporters Club seeds and save money again this year. Yeah, they are very expensive seeds. Very expensive. Oh, my nose is so itchy again. Everything's going up though, isn't it? And what worries me, I've hit upon this a few times, the potential closure of Wilco's. I'm a little bit worried where I'm going to get my onion sets from. I'm looking for some good onion sets this year. Nigel has joined. Muddy Boots. Hi all. Late clocking in tonight. Daylight and dry weather is precious, isn't it? It's starting to get dark early now, though, isn't it? But don't blame you for making the most of the daylight at all. Nice to see you, though, buddy. Jenny says, do you have room for your globe artichoke on your plot in the garden to grow it for pollinators? Bees adore the flowers. They look great with other flowers around them. So it currently is growing on my allotment. It does take up a large area, and you are right, it is good for pollinators. But I got many other things for the pollinators instead of a globe artichoke. As I said, for me, I'm trying to grow food, and the comfrey I find is also good for bees, and I've got plenty of comfrey. So yeah. It's just the fact that I don't eat the globe artichokes that is making me sort of think it's a bit of a waste of space, in my opinion, for that very reason. You got to remember, my garden, my allotment is set up purely for growing food. Bristol says, I'm growing Taunton Dean kale for the first time this year. Is this a perennial kale? Somebody mentioned this earlier, I think. When did you sow the seeds, or did you buy it in cuttings, or what? And how is it doing? Please do let us know. Nigel says to Bristol Veggie Beds, that is an old classic. I'm quite intrigued with these. I've got to say, I said I really do want to try. I'll keep saying I want to grow some of these. So yeah. Nicholas says it can come and have a holiday on the farm, the globe artichoke, that is. You are welcome to it. I'll dig it out for you at some point. I'll wait until it dies back and then I will dig it out. It's due to die back any minute now, actually. So you are welcome to the globe artichoke if you want it. I think there's two there, actually. Bristol says, I got a cut-in from a Bristol seed swap. That interesting. When I'm guessing most seed swaps are back in February. So how tall has it grown this year already? And how well has it done so far this year? That's what I want to know. Digwell says, globe artichoke has to be the largest vegetable on the plot. Is it worth the space? This is exactly, it's very architectural. I would say that. It is very architectural. But it does get very, very tall. I mean, I'm 6 foot tall and it's taller than me. As I said, I don't eat the globe artichokes, so it is a bit of a waste. Although I am thinking cardoons, which are a bit smaller, go to about 3 foot, I believe, might be a better alternative. They're from the same family, just a bit smaller, and pretty much the same sort of thing. Might be an alternative. Cardoons, I believe they're called. Jenny says, my rhubarb are planted on mounds to avoid it sitting in wet soil. My tayberry, raspberries, yacon and ocker are all in pots so I can protect them from the wet. Yeah, I mean, that's one way around it. I mean, wet soil is a problem. We are on clay here, but it is free draining clay, which is a miracle in itself. I'm guessing if you've got wet soil, you've either got you've got either on clay or you've got like a very wet area. One of the two. Amanda says, I'll be getting my seeds from Sow Seeds. They're the most reasonable place I found apart from Wilco's and a good variety. They have a sale on it at the moment too. Okay, I think I've looked into Sow Seeds before. Obviously, I mean, I'm just going to say the Supporters Club, of course, as many of you are members, £5 a month, 6 packs of seeds. I think it is actually probably the cheapest place to get seeds. You just don't get to choose what seeds are sent. Nigel says, just looked on net. Most Taunton Dale kale out of stock and the plants were £10. It's probably that time of year when they're not selling them so much, though, isn't it? Taunton Dean kale, says Nicola. My cutting came from Steve's Seaside Kitchen and Garden and Allotment. gave me mine. They were cuttings with small roots. Interesting. Yeah, I'd love to give it a try. Love to get some cuttings of that, please. When is a good time to move rhubarb? I have lots, but all grown in the wrong place, says Scott. This is a good question, actually, Scott. And quite topical, actually. Rhubarb is obviously, we've said, a perennial vegetable. You're probably going to look when it is dormant. So it tends to start dying back from September onwards. Yeah, so probably November, December, which is usually a time, if it's old, you want to split the rhubarb anyway. And then you dig it out while it is dormant, plant it where you want it to go. But do remember, again, prepare the bed beforehand. Make sure it's well prepared and be prepared that it may not survive the move. It should do. It's pretty hardy, rhubarb. But every 5 years, it's worth splitting your rhubarb crowns anyway. Nicholas says, my Taunton Dean cow I fed with mushroom compost, blood, fish and bone, and wood chip on top. There we go. There we go. Nigel says, for bulk buying seeds in large volume, have a look at mole seeds. Yep, indeed. Indeed. If you're buying them in large volumes, it's always worth going down the large volume route. Idaho, I love globe artichoke. My series sell small plants in 1 gallon pots. However, we have a shorter growing season and they die in my winter. Yeah, you're lucky. I mean, if you love it, you love it. I just never found a way to cook it that I really like it. Amanda says, Supporters Club are my main source. I just use the sow seeds for additional. Can't beat the Supporters Club for value. That's the way it's built. More rhubarb crowns, move rhubarb crowns during the winter months. So old gardeners leave the crown on top of the soil to get frosted. Yes, they do. I forgot about that. Yeah, I never understood why I can't remember why they would leave it on top to get frosted. Perhaps you can remember, Nigel or somebody. 90% of my seeds are from the Supporters Club, with a few from the allotment and the odd packet from a shop when I come across a packet I want to buy, says Turbo Stream. Jenny says, I have fantastic soil, but there is a deep clay base. The valley floods, so the water table can be high. No visible wet, but dig down and the roots can be soggy. Celery loves it. Yeah, celery does really well in moisture retentive soil, or almost to the point that it is waterlogged almost. I mean, it's amazing how well it does. I've grown celery quite a bit this year and we're doing really, really well with it. Quite a few celery in the pipeline. Digwell says the biggest problem with Taunton Dean kale is kale. Yeah, he doesn't like kale. I do remember him saying he doesn't like kale. Is it radicchio or chicory you don't like as well, or something along that line? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I mean, I like kale myself. Everybody's different. Funny enough, on that note, I mean, not quite on that note, but my wife, when she cooked me my dinner today, we had this bang bang chicken with rice, and she added coriander to the rice. Now, I love coriander, and I grow quite a bit of it, but my wife always said she doesn't like coriander, so I've always had to be a little bit careful with it. Today, she turns around to me and goes, I like coriander now. Completely blew me away because we have loads of it. So we're going to be eating a lot of coriander. Now I know that she likes it. Nicholas says celery may be good in a veggie pod. It is good in a veggie pod. I can tell you that because I've got it growing in there. It does really, really well. Digwell says coriander. I think that is don't know. Just coming out with coriander. Jenny says they were talking about rhubarb to be frosted on Garner's question time. They were saying it stresses a plant to make it more productive. Okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting. I will. That does make a bit of sense. I mean, I can say I don't need any more productive rhubarb, though, to be fair. My rhubarb, I mean, I could probably fill my entire freezer up with rhubarb if I wanted to. We have so much of the damn stuff. But it's nice, isn't it? I like rhubarb. Graham says, I just found an elephant hawk moth caterpillar on a fuchsia plant. It must be 3 inches long. I'm seeing lots of people are finding these hawk moth plants at the moment. They seem to be very, very popular, or seem to have bounced around quite a bit lately. And what's the time? Coming up to 7:10. So let's have a look at some of your photos that have been sent in. There's a good lot of photos, actually, all in our Facebook group. So please do go and check it out. First of all, we've got this handsome chap here. And Steve is filming a tomato taste test. Which tomato will come out on top? Find out on his YouTube video if you haven't subscribed yet. Next, we have, this is Scott. He has been away for on a nice holiday, but he's returned to find there's a good amount of vegetables in his garden, including this kale. I think it's kale. Tallies up with what we've just been talking about. Next, we have Kate, Chili Kate and Chili Phil. Are they here tonight? I haven't seen them. This is their allotment in August. Looking great, doesn't it? They've come a long, long way lately. Doing some very, very good tests. Stuart, he's also been away, and he came back to find lots of cucumbers. Cucumbers, I find, have done really, really well this year. I think a few people are saying cucumbers have done really well this year. We've got quite a few. We've got pickled cucumbers, sandwich cucumbers, normal cucumbers, loads and loads of cucumbers, all of which are really, really been eaten. Next, we have got Nicola. Now, she's bagged herself a bargain. We've been talking about the veggie pods, and this is her one that she got today or this week from Facebook Marketplace. I think it was something like £50. So real bargain. Does need a bit of TLC just to paint around the legs and everything. But as we know, the veggie pod are great. Amanda, who's watching tonight, she has been listening back to past podcasts for August and September. I mean, going back quite a while, 10 years of August and September podcasts. But she's also got her pup enjoying in the sun. So plenty of things going on. Kate's lettuce. Kate has let this lettuce grow a little bit too big. It's now taller than her. Probably going to taste very, very bitter, but it's a bit of fun, isn't it? Just goes to show how tall lettuce can really grow if you leave it to do that sort of thing. Next, Alex is asking, what is this on his on their onions? Sorry, was it white rot? I don't think it was white rot. She's talking about the white stuff. I thought it was just a bit of mycorrhizal fungi because but difficult to tell from the pictures. I think they came back and said it was just mycorrhizal fungi. Catherine has also been asking what has been happening with her tomatoes. She's got this sort of cracking going on and these little marks on several of our tomatoes. I think some of it is due to the over underwatering, or which has been difficult this year, granted with how much rain we've had. And some of it could be just rubbing and damaged from the rubbing. But also there's one that I think Steve came up and said it could be canker, but wasn't sure. That's the one on the right. Anne has harvested all this from her garden: tomatoes, peas, cucumbers, courgettes, lots of food going on. And it's all great to see, isn't it? Absolutely fantastic. So please do keep sharing your photos. You can post them in our Facebook group, or you can send them to me via social media. Alternatively, you can email me, richard@veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. So there we go. Please do keep sending in those photos. It's always good to see them. There's lots more going on in the Facebook group as well. I try and just choose one photo from each person now in order to use. Where have we got with the comments? Oh, Digwell, when he said coriander, you asked me what else I don't like. Coriander tastes like soap to me. So I said my wife was like that. I like coriander though, but I think it's genetic when it comes to coriander, which is weird why my wife now likes it. Itchy eye. Jenny says, I've loads of rhubarb, all of the Supporters Club seeds and germinating and growing away. Great. Yeah. Growing rhubarb from seed, I've done this year. It's amazing how well that has done. I mean, I'm going to be giving away plants because it's done so well. Stu Jackson, could you sow cabbage Durham early this week, as in our Supporters Club seeds? Thanks. Yes, that's on my list for either Thursday or Sunday, I think it is. It's coming up. But yes, you can sow them. Digrat says, I saw hummingbird moth for the first time this week. Too quick to photo. Hummingbird moth. There's so much. Is it me, or a lot of these things are starting to come back? Lack of pesticides, I think. I know says, I love Steve's tomato taste tests. Indeed, it's going to be good fun. I mean, it's interesting to see how different tomatoes taste as well, isn't it? Anything's better than those things from a supermarket, though. Scott says the kales from the Supporters Club seeds are looking really good, I've got to say. What else have we got? Muddy Wicks is saying to Stuart, Durham early, a lovely pointed spring cabbage. Yeah, really lovely. Nicholas is £25, not £50. Sorry, £25. She got the veggie pod bargain for. Absolutely. And a few people are congratulating Nicola on that bargain veggie pod. Why not? Well, why the hell not? I mean, it's great, isn't it, when you can get these things for bargains. Aaron has a great harvest, says Idaho. Indeed, all the way in Canada as well on that one. Anna, great photos, everyone. Please do keep sending those photos in. They really do make the show. Jenny says, did you get my little video / reel? I popped it on Facebook and sent it to you on Instagram. I can send it again if it didn't work. I did see it, but it's difficult to get it downloaded when you send it through either of those ways. You're best off when it comes to videos. Basically, send it to me via email via a website called retransfer.com. That's generally the easiest way. Again, with videos, I do prefer them to be vertical, but obviously, if you're doing reels or anything, I can doctor it to show that off instead. Just a little bit of work, but if you want to, please do send it to me, wetransfer.com, and my email address. My cherry tomato video went live earlier. Some lovely tomatoes. Nom, 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 nom. I love my tomatoes this year. We've got so many, and they are tasty as anything, aren't they? Good crop of tomatoes too, I'm seeing. Toby Stream says, I sowed a few French beans today. Really disappointed with the early sow ones. Again, to grow on a builder's bucket on my porch. Yeah, I mean, you might get away with the French beans. I was saying about my butternut squash. I've planted that out really late because it's been so slow at growing. But now it's planted. I'm hoping it's going to grow. And I can always cover it over to try and extend the season with a bit of enviromesh. So if you build a bucket and in your porch, you never know, it might do well. You never know. I've been actually admiring, and I'm looking forward to my Belotti beans. I've been successful with Belotti beans. They are doing really, really well down on the allotment. They are just drying out, and hopefully will be dry fairly soon so that we can actually start trying to harvest those. But they are so many of them, and they look absolutely fantastic. Right, guys, does anybody have any final questions about perennial plants before we drop out for tonight? I'm just making a note of that. Taunton Dean kale and other things like that. Also, we need to decide what we're going to do for our sew along for next week or for our subject. Now, the subject I was thinking of, I'm not sure if it's going to be too early for that, but I'm going to float this idea anyway, is that I'm starting to think about what I want to grow next year. I always feel the season starts in September, mid-September, because that's when I start planting my garlic out and my onion sets. So what I'm thinking of is for next week, I'm starting to think that what we could do altogether is start working out a list of seeds that we might want to sow next year. You know, the type like tomatoes, French beans, runner beans, the varieties, the different types, and just discuss it amongst us, everyone, to find out what everyone finds to be the best seeds for all the, or best varieties for all the seeds. What do you guys think on that? What do you guys think on that as a subject? Of course, we have got many other subjects that we could discuss as well. What have we got? You must have garden tools, your sowing dates, your potting on, secateurs strip down, weight loss, smoothie recipes, designer show garden, your favorite tool, garden design, and why do we grow your own? There's some more somewhere. What else have we got? Oh, chicken and duck keeping is one that we've got there. Pepper and chili something or another. I can't think what was that. When do you start planning? That's sort of the thing that we are talking about. Lots of comments came in wrong one. Lots of comments came in like that. What have we got? Stuart Jackson says, I would like to thank everyone for the amazing advice. As always, the live show is very informative. I learn so much each week. Indeed, it's always good to get some of conversation going. Kate says, great live. Hope everyone has an amazing week. Indeed, hope everyone does have an amazing week. Digwell says, some of the seeds came from the USA, like Tim's Taste of Paradise. Oh, excellent. I'm always careful when it comes to getting seeds from abroad. Just in case. I'm always cautious about it. That's why I don't send seeds out abroad either, just in case. Next week's sow along, French beans in a builder's bucket. French beans in a builder's bucket. French beans, builder's bucket. Okay, that's on the list of possibles. Jenny says, I'm definitely getting all I can from Wilco's to try and help them. Fingers crossed they are saved. They are very empty for seeds in the ones I've been in lately. Yeah. Stuart says, sowing for next year is a great idea. I will have a pen and paper ready for next week. Yeah, everyone will need a pen and paper to start jotting down what we're going to do. Nicola likes Turbo's suggestion of French beans in a builder's bucket. That sounds like we could do that. What else have we got? Idaho says, Tim's Taste of Paradise. That sounds amazing. Nice idea. Great. Good to get recommendations of favorite varieties. That's what I'm thinking. Try and get everyone's recommendations of their favorite varieties of seeds. Digra says, I second grown French beans in a builder's bucket. So we got 3 for that. I think that's what we're going to be doing. What else have we got? More in desperation, Nicola, to be honest. That's why we're doing it. What are we growing next year? Sounds great. So, yeah, that's so. I think that'll tie in with what we can do. It's going to be a lot of toing and froing is the only thing. We may have to do it over 2 weeks if need be. Stroud Wilco is nearly empty of everything, same as many of the ones near us, nearly empty of everything. What else have we got? Turbo Stream, I wasn't being serious about the French beans. I sowed a few to see if I could grow them into the autumn undercover. But this is the point of these sow-alongs, is that we can do things that are a bit unusual, a bit different, even if we're sowing them at the wrong time. I want to do it. It's up to you guys. You guys tell me what you want me to sow along and try and do. Nigel says, my allotment diaries go back 10 years. I tend to look back a few years to see what was sown. All depends on the weather, of course. This is the thing. It does depend on the weather. and each year, even the best varieties can change on a yearly basis. Kate says, I found a guy on Etsy who's based in Nottingham for really funky tomatoes. Neil Radford. I know that name from somewhere. I can't think where. The ones I got this year are amazing. I know that name from somewhere. Our Wilco has had new stock, also loads of new lines. Hopefully they get some garlic, etc. in. The stock will have already been bought, so fingers crossed. I'm hoping they will get some sets in, onion sets and stuff, because I'm struggling with those. Yes to what we are growing next year. Okay, looks like we're going to be doing that. So get your pads and papers ready for next week. That would be shocking if your Wilco stores are gone. It seems like a long-standing business. Always heard about Wilco's. Yeah, to me, it's the fact that the high street, or it just goes to show that the high streets are dying. Out of town shopping is a lot more popular, and this is where Wilco's, and also Wilco's are always a destination shop, but they're department store almost. They do everything but don't specialize in anything. I mean, I would say I would go into a couple of towns, Worthing and Bognor Regis, just to go to Wilco's. Now I don't think I'm going to be able to. Gary says, can I put my buckets in the polytunnel? Yep, I'm going to be putting mine in the greenhouse, so yes. Nicola says, I brought 2 window sill heated propagators for next year's sowing and some small LED grow lights to help get things growing. I'm going to be setting mine up soon, actually, for that very thing too. What are we growing next year for me? So, yeah, that's what we're going to do. Jenny says, I pre-ordered my Pink Panther onions. Too good risk to miss out. Sounds good, sounds good. Shopping habits have changed since 2020, and Wilco tend to be a town centre shop. Yeah, exactly. I've got to admit, I very rarely go into a high street unless it's work. I'm guilty of doing everything either online or it's garden centres. Wilco's is the only one I would go in town for these, really. Anna says, do the French beans. Let's see if it works this late. Okay, we're doing the French beans, guaranteed. I think Wilco will get taken over. A new investor isn't liable for the debt. Some stores will close, though. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So, kale in a builder's brazier. Yeah. Or is it brazier? All good fun. All good fun. You know, these summer-longs are meant to be a bit of fun, so it's good to get a good idea of what we want to do. So we're going to do the French beans in builder's bucket next week. In builder's buckets in the summer-long. And then what else are we going to be doing? What to sow next year. Make sure you got your pen and paper ready, because I think we're going to need to take lots of notes. I might have to get somebody to take notes for me, because I've got an idea. I think I really could do with doing a what do you call it, spreadsheet, but as you know, I'm not very good with spreadsheets for some reason or another, but I think that would be the way to look at it. I got a week to prepare of what we're going to do, haven't we? Right, Rebecca's saying great live and thanks and good night, Rebecca. Rebecca, thank you so much for your video. Really enjoyed that video. And don't forget, everybody, you can all send in your own little videos to play in as well. It could be a garden tour or something, a bit of fun, anything you want to do it, as long as it's related to gardening and preferably vegetable gardening specifically. But I bend the rules slightly for that. Brazier, what was used to contain a fire on a building site? Yes. They used to use it to melt the tar and stuff, I believe, as well, isn't it? I mean, make a good raised bed. Indeed, would make a good raised bed, wouldn't it, in some ways? Yeah. Jenny says, I really enjoyed tonight. Have a great weekend. I've enjoyed tonight, actually. It's given me a lot of ideas of things that I want to grow in the future. Perennial kale and all those sort of things. Yeah, I think this is good. This is good. This is why we need to expand and really try and tackle some of the subjects that you guys want to talk about more. Turbo Stream says, Brazier reminds me of the miners and the British Leyland strikes in the 70s and 80s. Is that like a... I can't think. It's before my time, I would say that. Scott says, another great live. Thanks, Richard. And Kate says, a great video, Rebecca. Indeed, it was. We've still got a couple of minutes to go, however. I keep forgetting to share the link of what we of how you can zap in. I cannot find the phone though as well. That's really annoying me because I want to get the phone line going pretty soon, or get the phone line going again so you can call in. Nigel says, a big oil drum with a fire inside. Yeah, a hobo bin it was also called, wasn't it? Hobo fire or hobo cooker as well. Oh, good. Yeah, but they would make a good little raised bed, cut in half. Lost 2 chicks this week. Sorry to hear that, Nicola. I'm very sorry to hear that. And Turbo Stream says you are too young, Richard. I know. Good. Top news, though. Top news I'm going to share with everybody. I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but I've been saying that my neighbours on my allotment haven't been attending to their allotment recently. They've been down there. They've trimmed it all down. Still looks a mess, but they've trimmed it all down, and I can now get to a lot of my plants nicely, which I'm really, really happy about, of course. Jenny says, tonight I will research how to plant perennial vegetables in my polyculture vegetables come food. Polyculture vegetable garden come food forest. Very interesting. It's really got me intrigued as well. So yeah, lots of good subjects, and we'll see exactly what we will do. Jenny says they saw your video. Oh yeah, they probably did see my video where I didn't want to complain about them because we don't know what's going on in this. My neighbours, of course, we don't know what's going on in their lives, but I didn't want to complain about it too much. But it was annoying that I've missed out on the black currants and red currants because I was just getting stung from the nettles when I was trying to harvest those, or the or what have you. Nicola says that's great news. She came down to my allotment a few weeks ago and saw it, so she knows how bad it was, and it got worse. It's annoying. Anyway, I think we are about left the end of this live stream. Ida says it's been another great live stream. Everyone's comments are so helpful and inspiring. I look forward to the program every week. I look forward to doing this every week as well. On that note, before we go, I do want to say, I meant to say this earlier. If anybody wants to win tickets to Gardener's World Autumn Fair on the 3rd of September, which is the Sunday, it's the day I'm doing a talk on stage, then I'm running a competition till midnight tonight from the podcast. But if you guys want to be in and you're free to go, you can win a pair of tickets. Just send me an email and say, I would like to be in that competition. It's Sunday the 3rd of September at Audley End House. I've just remembered that. I think that is just about everything I meant to say. Right, guys, you take care, and I'll see you again next week.